The ruins of old Earth stretched beneath Admiral Ko Rygar like a wound carved across the face of a dead world. From orbit, the planet looked as though it had been cauterized by a cosmic blade, continents cracked open, oceans drained into molten trenches, ash clouds shrouding the last remnants of what used to be humanity's cradle. His viewport dimmed automatically to filter the radiation flare rising from the Pacific Rift, but Kale kept the filter low, almost welcoming the sting in his eyes. A reminder. A warning. A ghost that refused to fade. "This is where everything started," he murmured. No one answered. The bridge was quiet except for the hum of diagnostics running across the consoles. Earth always silenced people. Even hardened officers who'd fought pirates, raiders, and corporate militias fell silent when confronted with the planet that birthed every human in the stars. Kale forced himself to look away from the scorched sphere and toward the glowing data panel beside him. A pulse in the array vault. Another anomaly. He clenched his jaw. The Singularity Array, humanity's greatest sin, still pulsed deep within Earth's dying core. Few knew it existed. Fewer understood what it could do. Kale had no intention of letting it define the war that was now creeping across human space. A soft chime broke the silence. "Admiral," said Commander Mira Solari, his second-in-command. "Border Fleet reports new gravitational distortions near Ilium 3. Kale straightened. "How large?" "Large enough that the autofilter tried to classify it as a micronova." She tapped her holobrace. "And it's stable. Not natural. A prelude to an attack." He turned fully toward her. "Connect me to the Ilium command net." "Now." Mira nodded once and opened the channel. Static crackled. Then screaming. Kale stiffened as multiple emergency feeds burst into life around him. The bridge lights dimmed as the Resolute rerouted processing power to handle the flood of transmissions. Visuals appeared, crowds rushing across spaceport platforms, defense crews scrambling into gunships, families shoved into evacuation shuttles. Civilians shouted over one another, their voices bleeding into static as interference climbed. Then the tremor hit. The first Imperial dreadnought broke through the distortion corridor like a blade slicing reality. A metallic crescent, kilometers long, drifted into clear view while its hull shimmered with cold, alien symmetry. Its antimatter lances glowed along its spine. Kale's breath caught in his throat. "Gods help us," Mira whispered. He didn't reply. The second dreadnought arrived immediately behind the first. Then a carrier. Then 6 cruisers. Their formation was surgical, precise as an executioner's hand. The Empire hadn't attacked human space in centuries, but they had always warned that humans were unpredictable. Dangerous. A wild variable in a galaxy built on strict order. Today, they acted on that belief. "Open full-spectrum channel," Kale said. "Connected." He spoke with an authority that snapped every officer to full focus. "All units at Ilium 3, this is Admiral Rygar. Prioritize evacuation vessels. Defensive stations hold triangle formation and concentrate fire on the lead dreadnought. Do not break formation unless ordered." Orbital guns answered a heartbeat later, streaking ion fire across the black. The dreadnought's shields flared as the barrage struck home. For a fragment of a moment, it seemed Ilium might hold. Then the dreadnought fired. The antimatter lance punched through the defense ring. 3 orbital cannons vaporized instantly. A wave of electromagnetic shock rattled Kale's bridge as the feed scrambled. "Multiple stations offline," Mira reported. The next transmission came from Ilium's surface. Kale saw entire city blocks swallowed by a column of white-hot energy. People vanished mid-step. Streets melted. Buildings folded like paper. He forced his voice steady. "Get those transports out. We're losing guidance beacons," Mira said. "If we don't keep a ship in orbit relaying coordinates, they'll scatter blind into the debris field. I'll handle it. Bring the Resolute in closer." Mira shot him a look sharp enough to draw blood. "Into firing range? Civilians need an anchor. Move us." "Understood." The Resolute tilted, engines roaring as it plunged toward the chaos. As they closed distance, Kale switched his display to the fleet's tactical net. A final message flickered onto the screen, originating not from Ilium 3, but from the Imperial flagship. Archon Vescarythun appeared in a cold blue projection. His voice was calm, almost soft, carrying an ancient patience forged over centuries. "Humanity," he said, "cannot be allowed to eclipse the galaxy's balance. Your kind grows stronger through adversity. You innovate through ruin. You rebuild faster than any species we have ever known. Today is not punishment. It is prevention." The message ended without flourish. Kale felt the weight of those words settle like ice across his spine. "Admiral," Mira said, "evacuation transports are launching. Imperial fighters inbound. Cover them." Kale pointed toward the burning horizon. "If even one transport makes it out, we save thousands." The battle exploded around them. Human escorts weaved between fighter swarms. Laser fire carved luminous arcs through the dark. Kale's tactical officers worked like a single mind, calling shield vectors, adjusting firing solutions, patching damaged sections. The Resolute shuddered under the first direct hit, but the armor held. A transmission cut through the chaos. "This is Transport 7, engines hit, falling." Static swallowed the voice. Kale's jaw locked. "Prioritize that sector." Before Mira could relay the order, a secondary blast lit the horizon. A chain of detonations rippled across Ilium's surface like cracking glass. A massive firestorm consumed the central continent. "Admiral," Mira whispered, "we can't save the rest. The Empire's deploying saturation fire." Kale closed his eyes for half a second. The screams, the collapsing signals, the vanishing heartbeats, he forced each into a cold corner of his mind, sealing them away until only one responsibility remained. "Retreat," he said. "Full withdrawal. Surviving ships, fall back to Thetaline." "Understood." The Resolute turned sharply, engines burning bright as they broke from Ilium's orbit. Behind them, the colony died in silence. Kale stared at the fading glow of the once living world and felt something inside him shift. The Empire's attack wasn't conquest. It was extermination. Humanity hadn't even had the chance to resist. "This isn't a war," he said quietly. "It's a purge." Mira looked at him. "What do we do now?" Kale straightened, voice steady despite the hollow tension spreading through his chest. "We gather what's left. And we find out why the Empire fears us this much." The answer, he suspected, would determine whether humanity lived, or joined Earth as another silent grave. The War Council chamber aboard the Resolute had once been a place of measured strategy and calm negotiation. Now it sounded like a riot wrapped in steel walls. Representatives from the surviving human factions argued across the central hollow table, their voices overlapping in a chaotic storm of accusation and fear. Maps of destroyed colonies flickered between their faces, casting red light across features strained by shock. Ko Rygar stood at the table's head, hands clasped behind his back, watching the disaster unfold. He needed unity. Instead, the galaxy's last pockets of humanity were tearing each other apart faster than the Empire ever could. "We warned you Earth-born militarists would trigger this!" shouted Counselor Hedrick of the Martian Tribunates. "Every time humanity expands, you provoke the wrong enemy." A corporate director snapped back. "The Empire doesn't need provocation. They've wanted this for decades." "Both of you are missing the obvious!" cried a freeholder representative, her voice sharp with panic. "Half our systems are gone. Ilium burned in minutes. We don't have time for blame." Kale allowed them to clash for another heartbeat. Their arguments carried truth, frustration, and terror, but none of it could save what remained of humanity. He raised a hand. "Enough." The word cut through the noise. Every head turned. Kale tapped a command into the table. The map shifted, replacing the colony destruction logs with a hologram of the Imperial fleet's attack vectors. "We cannot fight the Empire divided," he said. "And we cannot surrender. They don't negotiate. They purge." One of the corporate delegates leaned forward. "Then what's your plan?" Pray for a miracle? Kale locked eyes with him. I intend to understand why they attacked now. And once we know that, we find their weakness. A quiet murmur ran through the chamber. Doubt mixed with faint, reluctant hope. Mira Solari approached Kale with a secure data drive. Admiral, the decrypted Imperial core fragment is ready. He took it, nodding. Good. Everyone sit. The delegates obeyed, not because they trusted him, but because the alternative was staring into annihilation without answers. Kale slotted the data drive into the table's port. A sphere of blue light formed above the display, swirling with encoded figures and predictions. This is what the Empire knows about us, Kale said. The sphere stabilized into charts, growth curves, innovation spreads, population projections, technological leap estimates. They weren't flattering. They were terrifying. One delegate frowned. What is this supposed to show? That the Empire doesn't fear our weapons, Kale said. They fear our potential. Another chart flared to life, an exponential curve so steep it nearly broke the projection boundaries. Mira explained. Their models predict that within 5 centuries, humanity surpasses every major species in technological, military, and adaptive capability. Silence settled like dust. Kale stepped closer to the projection. Every disaster we endure pushes us forward. We rebuild faster than they expect. We innovate faster than they can track. According to their own calculations, humans become the dominant species in this region of the galaxy, perhaps the entire galaxy, within a few hundred years. Counselor Hedrick's voice cracked. So they're trying to stop our rise before it begins? Kale nodded. They believe it's us or them. The corporate director looked between the projections with disbelief. That's not justification for genocide. No, Kale said quietly. But it explains it. One of the freeholder delegates clenched her fists. If they fear us that much, maybe they're right to. Look at what we did to Earth. Kale felt a sting in his chest at her words. Earth was a scar he carried every day, a reminder of humanity's darkest capability. Yet he couldn't let that thought derail the truth. Earth's destruction was our own failure, Kale said. This war didn't start because we're violent. It started because we evolved faster than they can predict. The Empire has spent millennia eliminating species that threatened their order. Humanity is simply the next target. Mira shifted the projection to a series of Imperial Council recordings. Grainy, but clear enough to show the Archon addressing his inner circle. Humanity grows under pressure. Beskari's voice rang out through the chamber. Strike them early, or they will become unstoppable. They have no biological limit for adaptation. They turn defeat into power. Their extinction is non-negotiable. The chamber froze. Hedrick whispered. He sounds afraid. He is, Mira replied. Kale studied the frozen image of Beskari. The Archon's eyes were ancient, cold, calculating, but beneath that calm stoicism lived a genuine fear. Not of human aggression. Of human endurance. The delegates sank into their seats, absorbing the revelation. Kale stepped away from the projection, his voice firm but measured. The Empire's war isn't about who we are now. It's about who we become if we survive. They believe that exterminating us is the only way to protect their stability. The freeholder delegate spoke softly. So the question is whether we survive long enough to prove them wrong. Kale nodded. Exactly. The room fell into heavy contemplation. No shouting now. No accusations. Only the weight of a truth too large to ignore. Mira broke the silence. There's more, Admiral. The decrypted data contained a secondary reference, something about ancient human technology sealed on Earth. Kale's stomach tightened. He already knew what she meant. The array. Show them, he said. She hesitated. Are you sure? They need the full truth. Mira uploaded the final segment. A hologram of Earth appeared, then a latticework of quantum nodes stretching across the Orion arm. The Singularity Array's architecture glowed like a constellation of death. Gasps rippled through the council. What is that? One delegate asked. A last resort device, Kale answered. Built before Earth fell. Designed to prevent humanity from ever being conquered. Hadrick's face blanched. You mean? Yes, Kale said. It wipes out everything human. Completely. The chamber erupted again, but this time not in argument, more like collective despair. Why would we ever build such a thing? One delegate asked. Kale answered with a heaviness he could not hide. Because we were afraid of becoming slaves to someone else's empire. So we built something that ensured we would never kneel. The room went absolutely still. The shadow of that ancient decision hung like a guillotine over the present war. Humanity had crafted its own extinction as a shield. And now, with the Empire closing in, factions might consider using it. Kale looked at every representative in turn. We cannot let panic drive us to activate the array. And we cannot allow the Empire to force our hand. If we do, humanity dies by our own design. The corporate director spoke quietly. Then what's your plan, Admiral? Kale answered without hesitation. Unify what remains of us. Fight smart. Strike where they don't expect. And prove the Empire wrong. His eyes hardened. We are not the monsters their calculations predict. We are something far more dangerous. Mira finished the thought softly. As the council adjourned, Kale lingered over the hologram of Earth. The planet's dead surface glimmered faintly as the array's signal moved beneath like a heartbeat. A dangerous thought surfaced, one he pushed away before it fully formed. Humanity wasn't only fighting for survival. It was fighting against the version of itself it could become. The revelation of the Singularity Array hit the human sphere like a detonator. By the next morning, Kale watched the fallout spread across every public channel, private network, and underground forum. Words like extinction, self-destruction, and final solution pulsed across the holofeeds. Riots broke out on fringe stations. Markets plummeted. 2 separatist colonies broadcast demands for immediate surrender to the Empire. Fear had always been humanity's oldest enemy. Now it had a new voice. Kale sat in the Resolute's strategy lounge, listening to scrambled transmissions bleed through the walls. Mira Solari entered with a grim expression. Admiral, the outer colonies are in chaos. Some groups believe the array is our only shield. Others accuse us of hiding it for decades. Kale closed the briefing pad he'd barely read. His thoughts drifted back to the council's shocked faces when the array's lattice appeared above the table. It hadn't been all. It had been betrayal, directed at themselves as much as the past. Humanity is unraveling faster than we can stabilize it, he said. Mira nodded. And if we don't act, the factions will fracture completely. Kale pushed to his feet. Then we find the truth at the source. Prep a transport. We're going to Earth. The descent. Few living humans had ever set foot on Earth. Even fewer had gone willingly. As the dropship pierced the ash-filled atmosphere, the world unveiled itself in shattered fragments, blackened mountains, molten rifts, and fields of fused glass stretching to the horizon. Storms churned across the dead seas, hurling dust high into the air until the sky dimmed to permanent dusk. Kale stood at the forward window, helmet sealed, watching the ruins with a tightening chest. This was home, Mira said quietly. Once. His voice came through the suit's comms like a distant echo. Now it's a warning etched into stone. The dropship landed near an enormous fissure where the crust had split centuries earlier. A reinforced elevator shaft, built before Earth's final collapse, descended toward the vault that housed the Singularity Array's core interface. The air tasted metallic even through the suit's filters. Kale stepped from the ramp, boots sinking into ash. Radiation levels rising, Mira warned. We shouldn't stay long. We won't, he said. But we leave knowing exactly what we face. The vault. The elevator groaned as it lowered them into darkness. Metal ribs flickered with emergency lights that had somehow endured centuries of neglect. The temperature dropped steadily. Frost traced patterns across the walls. When the doors opened, Kale felt as though he had stepped into a tomb. The vault extended for kilometers, a colossal chamber of cold steel and dormant machines. At its center stood the array's command core, a cluster of crystalline conduits branching through the floor like roots of a mechanical tree. It pulsed faintly. Even after centuries, the array still breathed. A scientist from the engineering team approached, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fascination. "Admiral, we completed our first analysis. This system wasn't designed as a weapon, it's a guarantee." Kale frowned. "Explain." She gestured toward the conduits. "Every node in the network carries a quantum signature tied to human biology, language structures, historical memory repositories, artifacts, everything that defines us. If activated, the array disperses a cascade that erases all of it. Not through force. Through quantum nullification. So it doesn't kill," Mira said. "It erases." The scientist nodded. "Completely. No remains. No trace we ever existed." Kale felt a chill crawl beneath his armor. The weight of that knowledge pressed against him, heavier than anything the Empire had inflicted. "Can it be modified?" he asked. The scientist winced. "Not without triggering partial activation. We estimate even minor adjustments could collapse the containment fields." Meaning, tampering equaled suicide. Kale walked closer to the command core. The crystalline pillars flickered with faint blue light, as if remembering old instructions written by ancestors desperate to preserve their freedom at any cost. Humanity had once chosen annihilation over subjugation. And now fragments of that same desperation whispered through the vault. Fracture lines? On the return flight to the Resolute, Mira studied Kale with careful eyes. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm thinking. That's what worries me." Kale exhaled slowly. "The array is a blade hanging over us. If factions believe the Empire will breach our defenses, some will demand its activation. Others will threaten it to force concessions. Either path leads to collapse. Then we take control of the narrative," Mira replied. "Show them leadership. Give them a plan." He considered her words. Mira had always been his anchor, reminding him that leadership didn't mean certainty, it meant direction. But the delegates were already clashing, and distress calls were rising. When they reached orbit, the scale of the crisis became painfully clear. Holonews feeds swarmed with debates. Protesters stormed government halls on 3 colonies. An extremist broadcast from a mining moon declared, "If the Empire corners us, we activate the array ourselves." Kale slammed his fist on the console. "They're going to tear us apart." Mira looked at him firmly. "Then stop them." Choosing the line to hold, Kale gathered a small group of loyal fleet commanders in the Resolute's command center. Maps of Imperial movements glowed across the walls. He pointed to a darkening region near the Orion boundary. "They'll strike here next," Kale said. "The Empire will push inward toward Earth. They believe breaking our center will trigger internal collapse." "And they're right," Mira added. "Unless we unify now." Kale faced his commanders. "We must become the spine that the factions rally around. Not through speeches. Through action." Commander Wren asked. "You mean a counteroffensive?" "Yes," Kale said. "A precise one. We hit their forward lodgment before they finish mobilizing. If we win, the factions will follow. If we lose, humanity fractures beyond repair." Wren hesitated. "And if the Empire brings their full fleet?" Kale's voice hardened. "Then we show them something they didn't calculate, our refusal to die." Mira stepped closer, lifting a fresh report. Her expression darkened. "Admiral, there's more. Our long-range sensors registered a new anomaly." "What kind?" "Imperial drive signatures," she said. "Thousands of them. The largest formation ever recorded." Silence thickened. Kale felt the air grow colder. The Empire was not waiting. They were coming straight for the heart. "How long?" he asked. 3 days, Mira said. "This is their decisive strike." Kale turned toward the viewport, watching Earth's broken arc drift below. The planet's hollow silence mirrored the choice facing them. "We hold," he said. "No matter what comes." Mira nodded. "And the array?" We don't touch it, Kale said. Not unless humanity has no other path. He looked at his commanders, tired, scarred, but still standing. Prepare the fleets. In 3 days, humanity answers. The horizon darkens. As the alarms spread through the ship, Kale stood alone at the starboard window. The void remained calm, deceptively serene. Behind that calm, an empire was marching toward them. Humanity stood at the edge of extinction, or transformation. Kale straightened, accepting the weight of the moment. If we fall, he whispered, we fall fighting for who we can still become. The stars did not answer. But the silence felt like agreement.